But soon, he knew why. It's another you. Russell shrugged, squinting and smiling. However, they are all called Dormammu anyway, and this can be blamed on you. This reason. Very good, very powerful. Dormammu was speechless for a moment. Unconsciously, a strange emotion arose, with deep resentment. Why do you say you're fine and provoke him? In the end, it was I who had to bear the consequences. Isn't this just looking for me to suffer? Dormammu was so wrong that he couldn't help crying out loud. You go to trouble him. Why are you bullying me? God knows how wronged he is in his heart. Every day is in dire straits, and every day stops and stops. In the end, it turned out to be someone else's fault. Although they are all born from the same source, they are both called Dormammu. However, within the seal, the connection with the dark dimension is terminated. Who knows what that Dormammu thinks? I can't beat him, Russell readily admitted. Backed by the dark dimension, Dormammu's power is incredible. It's normal to fail. Maybe armed to the teeth, maybe even a little touch. The wand of Vadam in the left hand, and the book of Waishandi in the right hand. An eye of Agamotto hangs on the chest, and a magic floating cloak is carried on the back. However, after a long time, he must be the loser. Unless harm each other with the power of the time gem. Or, like last time, lead him to the earth. At the same time, there is a chance to cut off his connection with the dark dimension. Only in this way, there is a slight chance. Hearing this, Dormammu was also a little stunned. No shame. This is simply a model of bullying and fearing strength. Really think Dormammu is easy to bully? If only Russell knew what was going on in his heart. You can't help but smile and nod. That's right, you, Dormammu, are the best bullies. Knead flat, rub round and toss casually, and at this moment. There was a sound of footsteps. Russell raised his head and followed the prestige. Immediately, Modu's figure appeared in front of him, and he saluted respectfully. Supreme Mage. Russell nodded and said. Mage, what's the matter with you? Recently, outside the magic holy place, there have been a lot of outsiders. Modu spoke eloquently. They searched inside Kamar-Taj, and seemed to be looking for something. Outsider? Russell was stunned for a moment. Immediately afterwards, I couldn't help laughing. What else can we look for? They're just looking for our tracks. Dormammu invaded, and the movement caused by it was a bit shocking. Not only the entire Kamar-Taj people have seen it, but even the outsiders have attracted their attention. Mordo nodded, agreeing. At the same time, I couldn't help euphemistically saying. Supreme Mage, do you want to expel them? Looking at the appearance of these people, it seems that they are going to turn the whole Kamar-Taj upside down. Don't give up if you don't reach your goal. He is a little worried that this will affect the daily life of mages. However, Russell waved his hand and didn't care. Do not care. The enchantment of the magic holy place is not a decoration. If they can find it, it will be their skill. Anyway, they're just common people. If I can find the magic holy place, count me as loser. Hearing this, Modu could only nod helplessly. All right. After answering, he turned and retreated. But at this moment, Russell spoke suddenly and stopped him. By the way, Mordo Mage, have you found any clues about Caecilius? Modu smiled wryly and shook his head. Not at all. So far, no trace of him has been found, and I have not monitored his magic power fluctuations. Russell nodded. Caecilius was just a pawn, not of much importance. However, Dormammu behind it had to make him more vigilant. I don't know if it was his illusion. He had a faint premonition in his heart. I'm afraid, Dormammu will not give up so easily. Kamar-Taj. Outside the magic holy place, in a hidden room. Figures in black and sunglasses gathered together. If you don't know, you might think they are gangsters. And at the very front, on the seat, Nick Fury's dark and glowing figure is particularly eye-catching. At the moment, he looked at the information on the table and was having a headache. Ahead, the uniform agents were chilling. He lowered his head, not daring to speak. You idiots. Seeing them like this, Nick Fury was so angry that he couldn't help but swear. Over the past few days, the whole of Kamar-Taj has been scoured by agents. However, what he didn't expect was that, in addition to letting them have a clearer understanding of the poverty and backwardness of this place, didn't find any useful clues, he just lost all face as an agent. Now he can't wait to point his nose and scold them. However, he knew that wasn't going to solve the problem. So, I could only suppress the anger in my heart, and said as calmly as possible. Tell me, what's going on with this place? While speaking, he pointed to somewhere on the map. This is the only place in the whole of Kamar-Taj that has not been searched. He didn't believe it. It was because the agents were careless and ignored it. On the contrary, he felt even more in his heart that the existence of this place was the biggest anomaly. More importantly, he had a faint premonition in his heart. This is most likely related to what they are looking for. All the agents immediately looked at each other in blank dismay, hesitation, and did not dare to go forward. For a while, under Nick Fury's increasingly cold eyes. Only then did someone pluck up the courage to step forward, smile wryly, and say, "It's like this." The agent proceeds step by step and speaks eloquently. And the more he listened, the more Nick Fury frowned. In the end, it was almost like twisting into a twist. The expression on his face was also full of seriousness. "You mean, you can't get close to this place?" "Yes." The agent nodded, his smile becoming more bitter. "Whenever we get close, we will unconsciously go back the same way, and we can't get close at all. It's as if there is some kind of magic in this area." "Magic power? Is it an accident caused by some kind of super ability?" Nick Fury murmured. But he quickly shook his head and stopped worrying about this issue. According to the agents, obviously they are heading towards this area. However, after going in, but it seems that he has forgotten his purpose, unconsciously ignoring the past. "It wasn't until I came out and was reminded by others that I remembered my purpose." This feeling is as if the memory has been temporarily cleared. Some kind of strange power suppresses the thoughts in my heart. Nick Fury pondered. At the same time, the premonition in my heart became stronger and stronger. However, according to the agents, no matter how many times I try, the result is the same. I don't know how many times I went back the same way. Many people have doubts about life in their hearts. This feeling is incomparably terrifying. It was as if his memory had been played with. Many agents were even neurotic, suspiciously doubting whether their memories were real. However, Nick Fury can hardly believe the judgments of these agents just based on dictation. Although their terrified expressions have already indicated the abnormal situation in this area. However, he felt that it was necessary for him to investigate for himself. And at this moment, the sound of footsteps outside the door attracted everyone's attention. Soon, a figure appeared in front of them. Phil Coulson, agent. Nick Fury looked a bit puzzled. "How did you end up in this place? Shouldn't you stay by Tony Stark's side at this time, to get information?" Hearing this, Phil Coulson gave a bitter smile and couldn't help but sighed while holding his forehead. "Unfortunately, I failed, Director. Tony Stark is not a good person to talk to, he just doesn't like oil and salt. Don't talk about it." At the back, it seemed extremely difficult for him to even meet this person. "I was rejected directly. However, although I didn't get the information, I got an unexpected harvest." As he spoke, Phil Coulson smiled. No one would have thought that Tony Stark would come to this place. "He's here too." Hearing this, Nick Fury was startled and his face became serious. "In other words, our routes overlap." At the same time, I immediately thought of more possibilities in my heart, and my eyes flickered. Soon, he made up his mind and ordered, "Follow him. Perhaps, our purpose is the same, inside the holy place. A comfortable and leisurely life is continuing. It's okay. Shui Shui Chun, read a book, study magic. When you are in a bad mood, you can still carry a Dormammu brand punching bag and give you a fat beating." For the first time, Russell discovered that the position of the Supreme Mage was not as unbearable as imagined. Definitely, all of this is under the premise that nothing major happens. Holding the book in his hand, sitting cross-legged, Russell's thinking unconsciously turned to the distance. "I don't know, when will Aunt Marvel and Ronan start fighting?" In group chat, the lively quarrel continued. Aunt Surprise and Ronan became the most active users in the chat group. A unique scolding war is going on, and everyone else, all dives, turned into the melon-eating crowd, watching the excitement with relish. From time to time, he even made a few words of ridicule, as if watching the excitement is not a big deal. Not even him. Definitely, just bitter Thanos. Dozens of question marks could not stop Ronan's enthusiastic visit. "Well done," they got involved. Beside him, Modu stood respectfully. Looking at the books in Russell's hands, his eyes were full of envy. "This is one of the coolest books in the whole Kamar-Taj. Alchemy. That is, in the hands of the mages, the method of making the magic weapon. The reason for the unpopularity is not because this magic is too advanced and difficult to learn. The more important reason is, the conditions for learning this magic will wipe out most of the mage directly. It requires the user's own magic. A huge reserve of magic power is one of its hard conditions. Not to mention, it also needs to have the ultimate control ability. This is magic that only true geniuses can learn. Mage, who rely on borrowing power from other dimensions to fight, don't even have a chance to get started. Now, with Ancient One gone, The whole of Kamar-Taj is able to use this magic. There is only the supreme mage in front of me. Thinking of this, Modu suddenly felt a little ready to move. Supreme Mage, can you help me create 2 magical artifacts? Hearing this, Russell immediately raised his head and looked at him in surprise. Don't you have a magic weapon? Kamar-Taj's magic weapon inventory is simply too much, which is outrageous. There are not only magic tools created by Ancient One and mages of the past dynasties. What's more, there are strange items collected from outside. For mages, the options are many. However, Modu shook his head and sighed endlessly. These instruments are somewhat outdated. Take a look at what is in the magic weapon in his hand. A 3-section stick with sparks and lightning after being enchanted by magic. There is also a pair of flight boots that can fly several meters in the air. It's just for Modu, who has been exposed to new things in modern society all the year round. The feeling in his heart can be described in 2 words. Dislike. A look of disgust was written all over his face. Russell shot him a glance. Looking down again, he saw his 3-section cudgel that he quietly took out and dangled a few times under his body. Immediately understood what he meant. The times are advancing, and the level of human science and technology is also changing with each passing day. But the development of Kamar-Taj is always the same. It seems that it's time to replace you with a batch of more powerful instruments. Russell sighed. Humans have already driven planes and tanks. But as mage, the way of fighting is so primitive. It is indeed something that should not be done. Hearing this, Modu was immediately overjoyed and couldn't help but exclaim. Supreme Mage is wise. I believe the mage in the holy place will definitely cheer for your decision. Russell waved his hand, not paying much attention. Okay. Another day I will go to the outside world to find some materials and update them for you. Correct. What do you think of human arms? Do you like Gatling, who is on fire? Russell suddenly added with a bit of mischief. What the hell is Gatling with blue flames? Wake up, Supreme Mage. Mage's forceful style will be thrown into the ditch by you. Modu was very troubled. It's almost powerless to complain. However, at this moment, Russell suddenly noticed something strange. Huh? An outsider actually passed through the magic barrier? Outsider? Modu's heart tightened suddenly. Could it be an alien mage? Soon, Russell closed his eyes. After probing for a while, he shook his head and denied his guess. At the same time, the expression on his face was also somewhat surprised. I am a common person, I believe you should be familiar with it. His name is Tony Stark. Tony Stark? Hearing this name, Modu was stunned for a moment. The expression on his face was frozen, full of astonishment. Tony Stark is a familiar name. He definitely has heard of it. I believe that as long as it is not an old antique living in the deep mountains and old forests, isolated from the world. You've all heard of this brilliant name, however, he couldn't think of it. The person who can pass through the magic barrier is actually him. The perimeter of the magic holy place. Numerous magical barriers constitute the defense system of the entire Kamar-Taj. Among them, there is only one barrier against the common people. Dispel the enchantment. The effect is similar to the Muggle repelling charm. Able to disperse the common people, making them unconsciously ignore the place. However, a common man like Tony Stark came straight in. What the hell is this? Modu felt that he was messed up, and his mind was a mess. Soon, Russell explained his problem. Simple, Tony Stark is a magical genius. As a commoner, one who can ignore magic barriers. Even in the history of Kamar-Taj, there are very few who can do this. Or, it has a mental power that exceeds the average number of times, and can ignore the influence of dispelling the enchantment. Or, it has a powerful magical ability, and obviously, Tony Stark falls into the latter category, because Russell didn't notice the abnormality in his mental strength. Although it is a little stronger than the common people, it is not to the extent that it can ignore the dispelling barrier. It's okay not to explain. As soon as he explained, Modu's heart became even more confused. Tony Stark is a magical genius. Isn't he a genius scientist? How could magic have such a strong ability? Desperate wailing from Lord Common. Such a cruel fact hit him hard. It's simply unacceptable. How could his ability be so outrageous? Not only in scientific research, but even in magic, he is also a first-class talented player. In comparison, he is simply an ordinary common man. It wouldn't have happened if Russell wasn't there. He almost burst into tears with a wow. Why is the gap between people so big? Russell couldn't help rolling his eyes. If I let you know that he will save the world in the future, I'm afraid you can't help but jump off the building. Isn't the ability a bit powerful? What's so strange about it? Anyway, no matter how strong you are, it is impossible to beat him. But, let's talk about it. This Tony Stark really deserves to be treated like Marvel's own son. Originally is the center of the whole world, the focal person. Every time he plays, the crowd cheers. And now, he came to the Huo magic world again. This powerful magical ability, coupled with Kamar-Taj's magical knowledge. As long as the wings are installed, it is the rhythm of taking off immediately. Think for a while. Immediately, Russell turned his head and ordered. Modu Mage, bring him in. Kamar-Taj recruits Mage because of fate. What matters is doing whatever you want. However, there is one exception. It is Tony's ability that is powerful. As Supreme Mage, Russell felt compelled to lead him on the right path. Moreover, the entire Kamar-Taj is a pile of crooked melons, cracked dates, rotten fish and rotten shrimps, and there is no one to beat. It's also time to fully recruit some talents and enrich my family background. Also, I seem to remember that Tony Stark was also the Supreme Mage in a certain plot. A steel battlesuit combined with magic can actually toughen Dormammu. Tisk tisk tisk, good, good, simply perfect. A fine beater. It's done. The perimeter of the magic holy place. Tony's figure was wandering around. However, looking at the empty scene around. The expression on his face was a little dazed. This feeling is like suddenly coming to another world. The surrounding environment formed a sharp contrast with the lively scene outside. Here, the deserted scene seemed a bit out of place. It just makes people feel a little hairy unconsciously. However, it is precisely because of this. Tony became more and more sure of his thoughts. The situation here is definitely related to the magic, he said. I was thinking about it. Immediately, a smug smile appeared on his face. Speaking of which, I was able to find this place thanks to the information from the National Land Bureau. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't have found this place so quickly. After the annoying door-to-door visit by the Phil Coulson agent, he immediately fell in love with this mysterious organization. And let Jarvis check, and suddenly found something incredible. Yo-ho! This is actually a huge organization worldwide? It's hidden deep enough. However, the mortal thing is, in this organization, there are many things produced by Stark Industries. Happy to hear and see, Pudaxi Ben. Jarvis directly invaded along the background programs left by Stark Industrial Creations as usual. It took no effort at all, and they directly wiped out all their old backgrounds. And in it, it is natural to discover what happened in Kamar-Taj. Naturally, it was associated with magic. Ever since, I was eager to see the hunter. Curious about magic, Tony couldn't help but sneaked over alone. At the same time, through the monitoring of Jarvis. Immediately, I noticed the strangeness of these agents. However, what made him a little puzzled was, he didn't encounter any strange situations like those agents, and he returned the same way. On the contrary, the journey was unimpeded and nothing strange happened. Could it be that the master here doesn't refuse my arrival? Tony couldn't help but guess. However, just to be on the safe side, he still asked casually. Jarvis, have you found anything? No, sir. Strange. Why can't I see the existence of other people? Tony suddenly muttered in his heart. Is this also a kind of magic? And at this time, in front of him, a gold vortex suddenly appeared. Immediately afterwards, a figure walked out from inside. Mage. Seeing this, Tony was immediately overjoyed. This familiar scene immediately reminded him of the shocking scene he saw in the cave. Although I have seen it more than once, but looking at it now, it is still very shocking. Tony Stark? Modu had a depressed expression on his face, and cast him a look of envy. Follow me. Tony suddenly felt a little baffled. This look. Why does it feel so like those people outside relying on their own eyes? Could Mage also be jealous of his status as a billionaire? But immediately, he stopped thinking about it. Shaking his head, he immediately followed his footsteps. The other side. Looking at the scene in the surveillance, Nick Fury frowned. Sure enough, what these agents said is true. In the end, he still didn't choose to take the risk. Just let the agents try again. And he sat in the base camp to see if he could find anything unusual. The results of the tests were astounding. However, it is within reason. This also indirectly explained the abnormality of this area. Watching these agents go in cautiously. However, after a while, they will only be seen coming out with blank faces. It's not clear at all what's inside. Nick Fury frowned, thinking about the solution. But soon, he discovered something was wrong, and he was shocked. Where's Tony Stark? Why didn't he come out together? The agents followed Tony Stark and broke into the area together. Logically speaking, the first one to come out should be Tony Stark. But now, on the contrary, the agents have all come out. This playboy is still missing. Nick Fury's expression suddenly became serious. His eyes widened, trying to find the trace of Tony Stark from the surveillance screen. However, nothing. Nick Fury's heart sank suddenly, and the expression on his face was uncertain. It seems that he has succeeded. Sure enough, the person who brought him back to New York is related to what happened here. Turning his head, he ordered immediately. Phil Coulson agent, closely monitor everything in this area. Once there is a clue that Tony Stark appears, report to me as soon as possible. Inside the holy place. Tony, who had just arrived here, couldn't help but looked around and yelled. Hey man, is this where you mages live? Look at this palace structure, the retro shape, it's really old-fashioned. Need me, Tony Stark, to give you money to renovate the whole place? Modu's head was suddenly covered with black lines. Resisting the urge to give him a backhanded beating in his heart, he remained silent and led the way. Not long after, they came to the huge amounts of palace. Arrive. Modu said, turned his head and reminded. Tony Stark, Supreme Mage is willing to meet you personally. I hope you won't mess things up. Don't waste this powerful ability. Tony rubbed the back of his head, a little dazed. What does that gnashing of teeth expression mean? Hate iron but not steel? Still jealous of my Tony Stark ability? But immediately, he stopped thinking about it. He smiled and followed quickly. Supreme Mage. Modu saluted respectfully. And following his gaze, Tony was stunned. You're not the... Yes, I saved you. Russell smiled. But I forgot to tell you who I am. I am the Supreme Mage, and also the Asgardian of Earth. Hearing this, Tony became more and more confused. Thoughts in my heart were churning, and my thoughts were erratic. However, the thoughts in his heart could not be restrained from revealing. The expression on his face was full of surprise and bewilderment. It was rare to see such an expression on his face, and Russell also found it quite amusing. I didn't expect that it was just a casual rescue at that time, and a dream was implanted in him. This Tony Stark, I'm afraid he doesn't need to speak. I will jump into the bowl myself. Supreme Mage? Asgardian of Earth. Just hearing the name, Tony couldn't help but get excited. The thoughts in my heart are just around the corner. The desire for magic has once again risen to a higher level. Totally can't wait. Supreme Mage, I want to learn magic, Tony shouted excitedly. Words, full of eagerness. Eyes full of expectation also looked over. Hope to get the answer I want. Still, in Russell's ear. But there is a strong sense of sight. Coach, I want to play basketball. There was a sudden urge to laugh in my heart. But on the surface, he didn't show any emotion. Want to learn magic? It's easy. First of all, you have to be prepared to be tempered. Magic is not as simple as you think. Also, add enough sincerity. Russell said meaningfully, as if he meant something. Training? This is not a problem for me at all? Tony patted his chest, confidently assured. Immediately, and then couldn't help looking over with some doubts. The sincerity you said is... Russell gave him a meaningful look, narrowed his eyes and smiled. Didn't you just say, repair the entire magic holy place? Huh? Tony was dumbfounded for a moment. This has all been heard? I was just kidding, but you actually took it seriously? From the look of Russell, it doesn't look like he's joking. Tony felt like crying for a moment. Supreme Mage, do you think such a large project is appropriate? At that time, I'm afraid it will waste a lot of time. It's not a question of money at all. Tony Stark, the last thing he needs is banknotes. Quite the contrary, what worries him most. This repair work will inevitably affect his progress in learning magic. At that time, if it takes a few months, this is nothing short of a disaster. I shouldn't have said that. Tony regretted it. Hearing this, Russell froze for a moment. Immediately afterwards, he smiled mysteriously. You don't need to worry about this problem. What you should do now is to prepare suitable materials for me. All the rest, just watch. Good. Tony nodded reluctantly agreeing. He didn't know what the Supreme Mage in front of him wanted to do. But look at his confident look. There should be a certain degree of certainty. Ever since, he ordered it immediately. Jarvis, help me arrange this. Let the company prepare building materials, retro style, just follow this style. Also, don't forget, you must use the best one. This resolute approach finally looks a bit like the chairman of Stark Industries. Russell couldn't help but nodded in satisfaction. Though the mages don't care too much about the enjoyment. But who would say no to a better living environment? Many places are dilapidated, and the roads are potholes. Moreover, there is one thing to say. The accommodation conditions in Kamar-Taj are really outrageous. Some mages still live in adobe houses, can you believe it? Taking advantage of this opportunity, I can just improve it. It just so happened that there was Tony Stark who was taken advantage of. Soon. Under Tony's orders, Stark Industries moved swiftly and violently. The portal appears with gold. Under Tony's astonished eyes, pieces of material flew in directly. Moreover, the speed is extremely fast, and the transportation has been completed in a short time. Damn it. Is this magic too? Tony asked with wide-eyed eyes. Beside, Modu's expression looked a little weird. Because of Russell's big move, the entire Kamar-Taj Mage couldn't help but ran out to watch the excitement. And he happened to be approached by Tony. In a sense, it can't be considered magic. This is an extension of telepathy ability, an ability that even if you want to practice, there is nowhere to get started. It is more fancy, is ability, spiritual psychokinesis. Hearing this, Tony felt a little ready to move. Just ignore what Modu said earlier. Ability. What I, Tony Stark, lack most is ability. You don't need to think about it, I'm also a genius in the field of magic, Tony said proudly. With such a self-satisfied look, if it were someone else, he would definitely not be able to resist the urge to hit someone. However, Modu knew it in his heart, he's telling the truth. Tony Stark, indeed a genius, and at this time. Center of the square. Russell's figure suddenly moved. Fluttering, the body slowly rose up into the air. Then, he waved his hand. Suddenly, the earth trembled. The whole earth let out a heavy wail. Everyone present was suddenly shocked. Boom. Booms sounded one after another. And with huge amounts of movement, brand new palaces have sprung up one after another. Immediately afterwards, the pavement made of Qingxi board, training ground. One after another, it caused a sensation among the crowd. The exclamation continued, and Tony, who had just arrived, was even more stunned. Could it be that this is the power of magic? The power to control everything. Beside, after hearing this, Modu couldn't help shaking his head helplessly. You think too much. Common's mage doesn't have such an ability, and only Supreme Mage can do it. What I said was a little sad. However, in fact it is so. The ability to interfere with space is not something that every mage can possess. What's more, you need to have the mental power to move the entire area. The power of the Supreme Mage is not at the same level as ours. Even if we add up, we probably can't compare to him. Hearing this, Tony's eyes flickered. The expression on his face was not surprised but happy. It won't be long before I, Tony Stark, can do it too. This confident to some conceited words immediately attracted the questioning eyes of several mages nearby. However, Modu shook his head and couldn't help sighing inwardly. If it is him, there is really a possibility. The gap between common people and geniuses is really too big. Not long. The whole Kamar-Taj has a new look. The refurbishment was successfully completed. Looking at the brand new magic holy place below, Russell was very satisfied. Such a vigorous appearance finally fits the appearance of young people more. He's not an ancient one like the ancient one. There was no nostalgia in mind either. Instead, he wouldn't mind making things a little more comfortable in Kamar-Taj. After all, most of today's mage keep pace with the times and keep up with the trend of the times. Even things like Wi-Fi are used. I believe it is more acceptable. Definitely, the overall transformation is not much different from the original. Just renovated the whole magic holy place. There are just a few more palaces. The blue-gray stone pavement is still low-key, not luxurious at all. At this time, a group of mages kept cheering and ran over excitedly. All kinds of eulogizing and admiring voices make the ears feel calloused. And Tony also took the opportunity to come over. He smiled. Supreme Mage, when can I learn magic? Casting a glance at him, seeing the longing look on his face, Russell couldn't help but laugh. Then now, he turned his head and gave an order. Modu Mage, the task of guiding him into the gate of the magic world is entrusted to you. After all, in this regard, you are more experienced. Experienced ass. I see that you clearly want to embarrass me, Modu. Leading a genius mage, isn't this sincerely used to hit me? Don't you think you haven't hit me hard enough? Eyes are useless. Modu was confused, and his small eyes that doubted life didn't do anything. He hesitated to speak. However, he dared not speak. In the end, he cast a glance at the excited Tony beside him, which could only be turned into a helpless sigh. Okay, Supreme Mage. If one didn't know the sad and indignant expression on his face, one would probably think that he was going to do something. Turning his head, he patted Tony on the shoulder and Modu sighed. Follow me. From now on, the door to the magical world will be open for you. And now, you need to start with the first step. Tony quickly followed the steps and asked curiously. The first step you said was exercise, Modu said while walking. If you want to be a mage, you must first have a strong body. Otherwise, the powerful magical energy will not only fail to help, but will erode your body instead. Definitely, this is also to prepare for future fighting training. When you become a qualified mage, you must also learn how to fight. I understand the truth, but why is Mage doing combat training? Aren't all mages like the Supreme Mage, who can change the world with a wave of his hand? Modu. Hee. Young man, it seems that you have misunderstood the profession of mage. Come. Follow me to the third set of radio gymnastics to exercise your body. In the chat group, it hasn't bubbled for days. As a group leader, Russell felt that it was necessary to come out and mobilize everyone's enthusiasm. Supreme Mage Russell. At Marvelms.Carol, where are you? At Accuser Ronan, when are you going to fight? In a sea of AA stars, inside the spaceship. Ronan was frowning, looking at the star field not far away. He was a little muttering. What the hell? Why hasn't that Thanos guy shown up yet? According to the normal situation, with supreme wisdom at his back, even this frightening overlord would not dare to neglect easily. Surely someone will be sent out to meet him. What's more, there is a cooperative relationship between them. However, the current situation seems to be an accident. The spaceships had all arrived at the gate of his territory, but there was no sign of anyone coming out to greet him. Ronan couldn't help feeling an ominous premonition. And at this moment, in my mind, a voice suddenly sounded. When I opened the chat group, my face turned dark. I couldn't help scolding my mother in my heart. Those who ride horses really don't open any pots and carry them. It's not too big of a deal to watch all the fun, so you have to hold on to this matter. Originally, seeing that Carol hadn't bubbled up in the chat group for several days, the tension in Ronan's heart has been relieved a lot. At one point, she even thought that she had given up. However, Russell's reminder immediately made his heart tense, and he felt extremely painful. Looking at the name in the chat group, he was even more angry. If Carol really calls here, there is definitely this guy's part in it. Supreme Mage Russell, I remember you. Ronan gritted his teeth. And immediately, the screen flashed, and there was a new movement in the chat group. Ms. Marvel Carol. There's still a long way to go. Just a few more days. At Accuser Ronan, wait for me, in very few short words. A domineering aura that belongs only to the strong is unconsciously revealed. Seeing this, Ronan's face suddenly changed. At the same time, I also thought of her amazing fighting power. Weighed the level of his own fleet. I'm afraid, it's not enough for others to fight with one hand. Ever since, I can't control so much for a while. If you don't ask for help, everyone will die, so what dignity do you need? Accuser Ronan. At Thanos the Destroyer of Thousand Stars, I'm on the outskirts of your territory, send someone out to pick me up. After finishing speaking in a hurry, Ronan was relieved and relaxed a little. He should know what I mean, right? There's no room for him to sit idly by when a battle breaks out in his territory. This is an above-board conspiracy that cannot be rejected at all. The two parties originally had a cooperative relationship, coupled with the deterrence of supreme wisdom behind it. Even if he knew that this was a misfortune, he could only smash his teeth and swallow it in his stomach. However, the development of things is often unexpected. Thanos the Destroyer of Thousand Stars. Thank you for the invitation. I am in Sokka. Meeting the Grand Master, don't forget. Immediately afterwards, another picture was sent on it. Click to open it. It's the photo of Thanos and the Master of Sakaar, the Grand Master. A smile full of shining white teeth is fine. Even, Thanos made a scissors hand gesture. Ridicule. This horse riding is definitely mocking. Ronan's lungs were about to explode. The expression on his face was even more ugly. It's fine if you don't want to help, but you still dare to mock me. This is definitely a provocation to our Kree Empire. After you go back, you must report to the Supreme Wisdom. Seriously participate in this book. It never occurred to him. As the overlord of one party, Thanos will have a day of confession. Definitely, probably more reasons. It's because I don't want to get involved in their affairs. However, no matter what the reason is, for him, time is ticking. The most urgent thing now, still have to figure out how to avoid Carol's pursuit. How to get out of this big trouble. The other side. Kamar-Taj, inside the magic holy place. Silently diving, Russell, who watched the whole process, couldn't help laughing. This Thanos, it's interesting. Definitely, when he doesn't snap his fingers. Even compared to normal intelligent creatures, he is a better communication partner. Think about it too. It can be seen from this incident. A strong man whose physique, ability, and wisdom far exceed normal biological standards. How could it be so easy to be used by others? Likewise, indirectly, this purple sweet potato essence has an online IQ. Even if he has great love in his heart, he is not stupid enough to be used as a gun. At this moment, Dormammu, who had been diving for a long time, also jumped out. Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension, you despicable mage, I'm about to make you feel worse than death. Is life better than death? Seeing this, Russell immediately smiled. Supreme Mage Russell, who gave you the courage to say such a thing? Could it be you? At Hellord me Faithto? Faith, who is also a Dimension Lord, does have the possibility of uniting with Dormammu. Turning his head, however, Russell turned the fire on Dormammu. Don't you know that part of your will is in my hands? Do you need me to put him back, so that you can taste what it means to live a life worse than death? In the dark dimension, Dormammu flew into a rage. The expression on the horrible man's face became more and more ferocious. Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension, you're provoking a dimensional lord, mage. How many years, since becoming the master of the Dark Dimension, no one has dared to speak to him like this? It seemed that all the words that could arouse his emotional changes came from one person. Damn Supreme Mage. Dormammu gritted his teeth in hatred. Forget about Ancient One. After all, her strength has been recognized by him in the years of confrontation. However, what he never expected was that this newly appointed Supreme Mage dares to be so arrogant. Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension, not even the Ancient One dares to talk to me like that. There's a way to get out of the earth and fight above board, vile mage. Seeing this, Russell raised his eyebrows. What this means is, shall we touch each other? The above board kind? Thinking of this, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. What era is it, and you still pay attention to head-to-head, open and above-board battles? This is not a night duel. Why do we need to care so much? Mean? No, 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 this is called strategy. Only those who have no brains will choose head-to-head. Definitely, except in the case of force crushing. And at the same time, somewhere on Earth, the old man in a suit and leather shoes, with his hair combed straight, was walking slowly while leaning on a civilized stick. The leisurely pace and his old face couldn't be more suitable. Definitely, if anyone is deceived by his appearance, I believe he will not be stingy about sending him to hell. This is Moto Faith. To be precise, it should be his body on Earth. Disguised with a benign smile on his face, he hunts his prey all over the world. Treat the whole Earth as his back garden. Suddenly, was walking. The smile on his face stagnated, and his expression suddenly turned into astonishment. How can it be so good that it involves me? What is it called? Burn yourself? Innocent lie down? Mo Faith said he was innocent. What Dormammu wants to do, he has no idea. Faith, Lord of Hell. Don't wrong a good man. I'm a law-abiding citizen. At E3/3 a degree Mage Russell. Seeing this, Russell curled his lips and smiled disdainfully. Supreme Mage Russell. Good citizen? Law-abiding? A demon who likes to play with human souls? Faith, Lord of Hell. You can call me evil, but you must never question the spirit of a fiend's covenant. I didn't break the contract. This is true. Russell couldn't refute anything either. According to the contract signed between Ancient One, Odin and Murdo Faith, this Hell Lord has the legal right to operate anywhere on Earth. Unlike Dormammu, he has more communication possibilities. Moreover, the devil's spirit of contract is just as he said. No doubt, for hundreds of years, there has never been any major disturbance on the Earth. Definitely, more may also be the careful research of Ancient One and Odin. At the same time, he kept his eyes open and did not give the Hell Lord a chance to take advantage of the contract. Like patterns on parchment or something. However, thinking of this, Russell suddenly thought of one thing. Supreme Mage Russell. Ancient One Mage abdicates, and the original contract is void. We need to sign a new contract. Faith, Lord of Hell. I don't have time recently, I'll talk about it when I have time. Supreme Mage Russell. What if something unexpected happens? Faith, Lord of Hell. Don't worry, you have to trust me. After all, haven't there been any accidents for hundreds of years? Russell. How do you feel that this is a bit like a flag? Kamar-Taj, inside the holy place. Thanks to the generosity of Tony, who owns money ability. Everything inside has been updated. Everything is new and luxurious. Definitely, luxury or not, it doesn't matter to Russell. The stench of capital could not corrode his heart in the slightest. Most importantly, comfortable. Sitting cross-legged on the seat, Russell raised his glass and took a sip of the tea. It's time to start researching new magic again. In the past, when he was common mage, he had a lot of time to study new magic. Only by dedicating yourself wholeheartedly can you extend so many magic skills. But now, sitting on the position of supreme mage, I feel a little slack. Picking up the book of Emperor Wysandi on the table, Russell couldn't help feeling a little bit emotional. As expected of an artifact that claims to record all white magic, the magic reserves are astonishing. He has already read all of this book. Most of the magic can also be used easily. The huge magic power is like a hand, which is the benefit of using one's own magic power. Coupled with itself, as the magic power grows, the spiritual power will also grow stronger under its nourishment. Most spells can be learned just by looking at them. Even what is recorded in the book of Emperor Wyshan is no exception. However, thinking of this, Russell couldn't help feeling a little depressed. The magic in Emperor Wyshan's book is really scary. However, there is only white magic. What is white magic? A collective term for auxiliary spells and defensive magic. In other words, there is nothing offensive about it. Definitely, it's not that there isn't one. It's just that it's so pitiful. I believe that if it weren't for Russell to further develop the mirror space magic ability to affect display has been extended. Even if he is the supreme mage, he can't avoid jumping forward and fighting the enemy hand to hand. Kamar-Taj is good for everything but not much offensive magic. In the library, there is no magic that can directly threaten the enemy. Not to mention any destructive power. Even if it is left in the hands of Ancient One, the relics of the mages of the past. In private, it was recorded in the research notes left behind secretly. However, there are only a few, in order not to embark on the path of hand-to-hand mage. So, Russell decided to do his own research. Immediately, he cast his gaze down. Sealed Dormammu's container teapot body. In terms of destructive power, I'm afraid there aren't many more research-worthy powers than the Dark Dimension, right? Inside the teapot. Noticing Russell's friendly smile, Dormammu couldn't help but tremble in his heart. If you have something to say, don't come here. Another Dormammu yelled at me again. Russell said truthfully with a smile on his face. Although, again for the same reason, but who told Dormammu to speak provocatively first? Damn Dormammu, what the hell are you doing to me? Dormammu burst into tears and couldn't help but shouted to the sky. Inside the teapot, a tragic and miserable voice echoed. Good guy, he even scolded himself, however, while Dormammu was scolding his mother in his heart. As soon as the topic changed, Russell continued. However, this time I don't intend to punish you. Hearing this, Dormammu breathed a sigh of relief. For a moment, the wailing stopped. It's just that it was very fast, seeing the movement of Russell's big hand covering it. His heart suddenly rose to his throat again. What do you want? What if you don't do it? Don't worry, I keep my word. Russell squinted and smiled. However, as one of the conditions for letting you go, I need you to cooperate with my research. Research? What research? Dormammu became increasingly vigilant. As a dimension Mephisto that watches over the earth at all times. He definitely understands the common sense of human society. This so-called research. Could it be that he was going to be dissected like those evil experiments? This is too miserable. Thinking of this, Dormammu's heart trembled, and he was suddenly sad. However, Russell's eyes flashed, as if he had sensed his thoughts. Shaking his head, he denied, you think too much, I'm not doing some evil experiment. I need the power of the dark dimension, conduct research. Hearing this, the tension in Dormammu's heart suddenly eased, and the boulder fell to the ground. The power of the dark dimension. This is simple. However, you need to get me out of here, I can't communicate with the dark dimension inside. Okay. Russell readily agreed to his request. Even if Dormammu didn't say it, he'd do it. After all, it is a fact. However, before that, he needs to be reminded. I want you to be more self-conscious, you know what I mean? Russell squinted and looked straight ahead. The deep eyes pierced through the seal and appeared in front of Dormammu. Scared. This look is really scary. Understand. Although Dormammu's confession is really excellent. However, in order to prevent any accidents, Russell still kept a safe hand. In the mirror space. Russell stands on the training ground inside the holy place. Next to it, there are countless mages who are training like projections. Every now and then someone walks by, but without exception. As if he couldn't see him, he ignored the past. There were even people who passed directly through his body without collision. Here is the other side of the real world. Like a reflection, it reflects everything except creatures. At the same time, this is also one of the important battle magics of mages. People from the outside cannot perceive anything happening inside. And, more importantly, inside, mages' combat power will be greatly increased. Even Mage, who looks like a stickmaster on the outside. It can also be turned upside down. For Russell, though, it didn't do much. What can be done in the mirror space, he can also do in reality. Not much difference. After scanning around, no other mage was found staying in the mirror space. Russell nodded in satisfaction. Very well, Dormammu, you can come out. After finishing speaking, the light of gold in his hand shrouded, and the rich magic power gathered together. Click. After a crisp sound, numerous cracks appeared on the surface of the teapot. Soon, a faint black mist emerged. In midair, they converged into the form of Dormammu. My Dormammu is finally out. Unable to bear the sky and let out a long cry, Dormammu suddenly had the urge to burst into tears. Seeing this, Russell curled his lips and said disdainfully, "Why are you yelling so loudly? Only the big-headed doll left. Why don't you come down quickly? Big-head doll? Who? Do you know who this is talking to?" Hearing this, Dormammu was taken aback for a moment, and couldn't help but want to get angry. But then, looking down, he saw Russell. Suddenly, the anger dissipated and turned into nothing, with a flattering smile on his face. "Yes, yes, I'm coming down, Supreme Mage, Mephisto's creeping." A hero does not suffer from immediate losses. After going through several painstaking trials in the hands of Russell, Dormammu has shadows now. I racked my brains and tried my best to make my life more comfortable. Obediently obey Russell's orders. Anyway, it's just a little bit of power drawn from the dark dimension. Not a big deal. If he wanted to take the opportunity to escape, he was even more worried. Has this insidious Supreme Mage prepared a magic barrier for him? But it is true. Let Dormammu guess right. Russell never did anything he wasn't sure about. The periphery of this area has been covered with magic enchantment by him. Even in the space, there is magic hidden. 3 floors inside and 3 floors outside. Not at all worried that Dormammu would take the opportunity to escape. Even Dormammu of the dark dimension wants to take him back. Russell, too, was sure to cut him off before the shot was made. With the Dormammu in his hands, there is no escape. However, speaking of it, this Dormammu seems to be completely out of touch with the Dormammu of the dark dimension. Looking at Dormammu, who was diligently communicating with the dark dimension beside him, Russell couldn't help squinting his eyes. This is a difference in thinking brought about by environmental changes. Dormammu, who sits in the dark dimension, is arrogant and murderous. And the one in front of him, submissive, doesn't look like a Mephisto with any dimension at all. There seems to be a lot of room for manipulation. The same as all Dormammu. Similarly, they all have control over the dark dimension. The difference is, the power gap between the two is so large that it is unimaginable. By contrast, the Dormammu in front of me is as weak as a small ant. Perhaps it only takes one look to assimilate him and return him to his original body. A thick fog filled the air. Swirls of lacquer black gradually appear. The power of the dark dimension spreads, corroding everything around. Beside, Dormammu couldn't help shouting excitedly. The channel is open. At the same time, huge amounts of people's faces are filled with intoxicated expressions. Long-lost dark energy. Suddenly there is an urge to cry. It's really been a long time since he experienced the constant feeling of strength. Even he felt that hateful Supreme Mage. Is there a problem? Russell, who was holding the container he had prepared long ago and was constantly collecting dark energy, suddenly turned his head. Dormammu was taken aback for a moment. Huge amounts of head shaking like a rattle. "No, you go on, go on." After confirming the eyes, he is the one who cannot be beaten. Farewell. The deep darkness remained unchanged. Even if there are some strange colorful decorations, it can't light up the space. This is a dead place. In the entire space, there is no breath of living things. All things come to an end, all returns to silence. This is a dark dimension, a place where even the undead dare not set foot. Because, all creatures who dared to enter it were devoured by the master here, and there was not even a scum left. And in the center of this dead space, on a barren planet, the figure of Dormammu stood. Sudden, a rage's voice sounded. Spread throughout the dark dimension. Dormammu was furious, and a terrifying aura filled the air. "Who is it? How dare you steal the power of my Dormammu?" He vaguely remembered. The last one who dared to do this was Ancient One. However, they are used to extend their lives. A steady flow of water, extracted bit by bit. He opened his eyes and closed his eyes and passed. However, in the current situation, what kind of trickle is flowing? This is clearly opening the gate to release water. Although this power is not worth mentioning compared to the entire dark dimension. However, such behavior, it's like sucking his blood. Although it doesn't hurt, my heart is burning with anger. For a moment, the dark dimension vibrated. The entire space responds to Dormammu's emotions, changing unpredictably. However, when he came to the dimensional channel that was opened from the outside world, suddenly a little confused. Isn't this the newly appointed Supreme Mage? Through the dimension channel, he recognized the figure of this enemy at a glance. His eyes reflected hatred, burning with anger. It turns out that you are playing tricks. A huge amount of dark energy was flowing into the container in Russell's hand at a speed visible to the naked eye. The beginning and end of all this suddenly became clear. It is the Supreme Mage in front of him who is stealing his power. Just as he was about to take action, he glanced out of the corner of his eye, and Dormammu's huge body froze for a moment. And at this moment, he sensed his aura. Dormammu below also looked up and forgot to come over. For a moment, the eyes widened. The two Dormammu, one big and one small, looked at each other affectionately. Suddenly, like a volcano erupting, a furious voice came from the other end of the passage. Dormammu was instantly furious, becoming more and more terrifying. Traitor! How dare you betray me? You betray yourself. What kind of operation is this? Dormammu couldn't figure out how Russell did it. However, the scene in front of me showed everything. For a while, all the doubts in my mind were resolved. No wonder someone was able to hide from him, the master of the dark dimension, to open the passage. No wonder he was able to steal his power so smoothly. It turned out that he was betrayed by himself. Dormammu felt like he was going to explode right now. The huge breath pressed down directly. The power of the entire dark dimension converges. For a time, the wind was surging. Under the impact of this force, the dimension channel expanded more and more. And Dormammu underneath suddenly felt that his whole body was out of control. The whole person flew towards the dark dimension. Finally free. Merging with the dark dimension, no matter how you say it, is better than staying with this Supreme Mage. Thinking of this, Dormammu burst into tears. Don't look at how raged Dormammu is above. Anyway, sooner or later they will be integrated. How to vent his anger is not something he should worry about. It's impossible to beat yourself, right? The rift of terror gradually widened. Dormammu's body gradually rose, however. At this moment, below, Russell just stopped what he was doing. After the dark energy is collected, these should be enough. Looking up, he suddenly saw the figure above. The two Dormammu meet and become one again. This is not what he wants to see. Come back to me. Russell stretched out his hand and smiled slightly. The magic power that has already been prepared rushes forward. Inside the body, huge magic power surged out one after another. At the same time, everywhere around, various magic barriers lit up one after another. The radiance of magic flickered. Soon, under the desperate eyes of the two Dormammu, the dimensional passage gradually closed. No. There was a shrill cry. Dormammu fell from the sky with a look of lovelessness on his face. On the other side, in the dark dimension, Dormammu couldn't help roaring. Damn Mage, damn seal, lying on the cold floor. Dormammu's heart was also cold. He couldn't figure out how Russell had prevented his return in such a timely manner. Was it premeditated, or was it really a coincidence? Just when he was about to return to the dark dimension, he was pulled back to the ground directly, but immediately, he didn't have time to think about it. Russell's movements were swift. He was immediately sealed into a new container. It was as if everything was already prepared. And he was too lazy to struggle. Let him do what he does, and his heart is as dead ashes. Perfect. After finishing everything, Russell couldn't help nodding with satisfaction. As Dormammu had in mind, all of this was premeditated. And the purpose is to make him give up. Want to return to the dark dimension? Or save it? Wouldn't it be nice to stay by his side honestly and be a toolman, to eat and drink spicy food? Clapping his hands, Russell was about to leave. However, suddenly remembered something. Open the chat group immediately. After some manipulations, he left satisfied. In the dark dimension. Dormammu was furious, almost insane. The entire space trembled with his monstrous anger. This time, it wasn't just a provocation to him. He even stepped on his face fiercely. Whoever it is, will find it unbearable. What's more, this is Dormammu, the Lord of the Dark Dimension. Full of anger, but nowhere to vent. Immediately, Dormammu thought of that magical chat group. In this dead space, this chat group that suddenly appeared seemed to be the only lifeline. Not only can it be used as a pastime to relieve worries and fatigue, but it can also be used as a channel for him to vent. However, opened the chat group, just about to vent his anger. You have been banned by the group leader, Lord? Looking up the names in the chat group, he suddenly found that unusually eye-catching name. Supreme Mage Russell. Dormammu paused every word, gritted his teeth. You despicable mage, wait for me, I will make you pay the price. Get out of the mirror space. Along the way, the respectful greetings of mages continued. As a last resort, Russell had no choice but to smile and nod in response. By the end, it feels like the smile has become stiff. At this time, behind him, a voice sounded. Supreme Mage. Looking back, I was a little surprised. What is it you, Tony Stark? Tony gasped, with a proud expression on his face. You should call me Tony Mage now, so fast. Russell was also stunned for a moment. It's only been a few days, and you've just started? The speed of learning magic is almost catching up with him. At this time, Modu's figure also caught up. Hearing this, his face immediately turned black. Don't listen to his nonsense, Supreme Mage. This guy is half-baked at best. Even teleportation magic has its ups and downs. Hearing this, Tony touched the back of his head in embarrassment and retorted. If it wasn't for you interfering with me, I would have learned such a simple magic a long time ago. The classic, if someone's behind you can't pee, theory. Can't tell, Tony is also a good hand at throwing the pot away. A big black pot was directly photographed on Modu's head. The already dark face suddenly became more ugly. You bastard. Furious to explode, I just want to hit someone. If it weren't for the fact that Supreme Mage was beside him, he would have rolled up his sleeves and practiced with him a long time ago. But now, I can only give him a fierce look before giving up. Hey. Tony smiled smugly, with a happy smile on his face. Over the past few days, this Modu Mage can be regarded as tossing him miserably. The hands were not light or heavy, and he was severely beaten. The point is, he still can't fight back, he just can't fight. But now, seeing his deflated picture is also the same. My heart suddenly felt refreshed. But immediately, he turned his head, his face straightened, and hesitation opened his mouth. Supreme Mage, there is something I don't know if I should say it or not. Oh? What's the matter? Russell was suddenly interested. I think the daily training sessions can be cancelled, Tony explained solemnly. This kind of exercise doesn't have much effect. It's not that he can't suffer and can't bear the intensity of training. It's because the human body has limits. Even as a mage, with the blessing of magical energy, it doesn't have much effect. In his opinion, daily training is more to build muscle memory so that it can be used in future battles. However, let's say it is used in combat, he had a better idea in mind. I have a way to make mages more powerful. See Tony's confident look. Russell seemed to have guessed something too. Really? Tony's next words just corresponded to the conjecture in his heart. That is, the steel battlesuit. Next to him, Modu was a little dazed when he heard this unfamiliar word. Steel battlesuit? What is this? Hey. Tony smiled and said, this is a combat armor that can not only be used for combat, but also greatly enhance the user's defensive ability and mobility. As long as you wear him, the mage's combat power can be greatly increased. Those daily training and so on, don't need it at all. Being a mage, instead of learning good magic, he exercises his body all day long. Such a thing was really unacceptable to him. It doesn't match the image of mage in his impression at all. As early as before, he had the idea of building such a battlesuit. And in the terrorist cave, this idea is even stronger. However, after being attracted by the power of magic, it was temporarily put aside. And now, it just happened to be realized. Hearing this, Russell suddenly thought about it. The ability of the steel battlesuit is really good. At the very least, it has strong mobility and not so weak offensive ability. That's what common mage doesn't have. After all, no matter how hard you practice, you still can't get rid of the fact that you have a mortal body. Similarly, it still belongs to the category of normal human beings. However, the steel battlesuit is different. Among them, a very simple point. It can fly. This alone, I believe it can make all mage moved. If the power of magic is added to it, the combat power. However, for Tony, the design of this steel battlesuit is almost his painstaking effort. A crystallized product of all the technologies in his hands. Will he hand it over so generously? The answer is obvious. No. Tell me, what are your conditions? The Tony in front of him showed his affection for no reason, and Russell believed that he must want to get something. Sensing his gaze, a satisfied smile appeared on Tony's face. It's simple, I want to learn real magic. Well, just like you, Supreme Mage. As he spoke, he waved his hand unconsciously. Next to him, Modu couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth a few times. And Russell was speechless for a moment. This child seems to have misunderstood the power of magic? Can the magic power unleashed by common mage match him? Obviously. Russell's ability to change the world with a wave of his hand left a deep impression on him. The mage of common does not have such ability at all. So that Tony, a genius, mistakenly thought he hadn't touched the core of the magic holy place. Perhaps in his heart, only abilities like Russell can be regarded as real magic. Sensing the longing in his eyes, Russell couldn't help shaking his head, sighing inwardly. Sometimes, thinking too much is not a good thing. And Tony in front of him is a good example. Too much brain supplementation, the consequences are unimaginable. But soon, Russell pondered for a while, then nodded. Okay, I agree. Since he has made up everything in his own brain and is still willing to believe it, there is no other way. Even if they disagree, they will probably be stalked. Simply, agree to his request directly. Russell didn't take advantage of him, though. It just so happens that there is something that can meet your needs. Reaching out, a gold portal opens beside it. At the same time, something was taken out of it. It's the Book of Emperor Weixin. Mo Du looked at the big characters on the book, and was immediately moved. At the same time, I couldn't help dissuading. Think carefully, Supreme Mage. This is an artifact that only the Supreme Mage is qualified to master. Artifact. Hearing those words, Tony's eyes lit up. Looking over with longing eyes, although he doesn't know what it does. However, the word divine weapon alone gave him a great stimulus. Very attractive. Needless to say, Russell waved his hand, interrupting Mordo's words. This book, originally, is for cultivating the next generation. And it just so happens that Tony is a genius mage. Why do you think Ancient One is not shown for you to watch? Isn't it because your abilities are not enough? Afraid that you will have accidents? These words hurt my heart. Respectfully took the Book of Emperor Weixin. Immediately, Tony patted his chest in reassurance. Trust me, it won't be long before you see my steel battlesuit. At that time, the combat power of the entire magic holy place mage will definitely be raised to a higher level. After speaking, he left happily. I can't wait to check out the magic on Weishandi's book. Russell suddenly laughed a little dumbfounded. Looking at his back as he left in a hurry, some didn't know what to say. Of course, he didn't believe Tony's words. He still knows the difficulty of building a steel battlesuit. Just building a set for yourself takes constantly time. Not to mention, what Tony promised was to build a steel battlesuit for the Mage of Kamar-Taj. This is obviously a big project. In a short time, he didn't expect to see any results. However, thinking of this place gave Russell a faint headache. Enchanting these hundreds of battlesuits is a big project. Wear a thick layer of armor on the human body. Originally, it will interfere with the use of magic to a certain extent. And, more importantly, this is pure high-tech. For mages, this is an insult to magic. This is a bit outrageous. Therefore, enchanting transformation is very necessary. At the very least, it can make them more acceptable. However, there are still many problems. That's the matter of enchanting, but there is still this material. Where should I find it? Also, the two instruments promised to Modu. Suddenly I have a headache. Suddenly. Russell discovered this time, the mess he had inherited. There are quite a lot of things, but immediately, he discarded these thoughts in his mind. I don't want to think about it so much for the time being. I'll talk about it after Tony builds the steel battlesuit. Now, go about your own business. Magic Studies course, start now. One day, near evening. Inside the magic holy place. Just finished a day of magic research. Russell stretched and walked out of the mirror space. As soon as he walked out, he saw Modu, who had been waiting for a long time. How's Tony doing? After taking the tea he handed over, Russell took a sip and asked casually. Tony Mage. At the mention of this name, Modu's expression turned a little ugly. Under Russell's curious gaze, he had no choice but to say. Tony Mage is still learning magic. He's going crazy. He's holding Emperor Weixin's book and he doesn't want to let it go. I don't even have time to accept the teachings of other mages. Also, the steel battlesuit he mentioned didn't even see a shadow. Supreme Mage, I have reason to suspect that he is deceiving us. Well said at the time. Even under Tony's wild imagination, Modu couldn't help thinking about this steel battlesuit. However, up to now, let alone a steel battlesuit, I haven't even seen its shadow yet. The only thing that can make him think about it. It's the blueprint that Tony took out. Although I can't quite understand it, I can still see the general appearance of that steel battlesuit. However, every time I asked him, the reply was generally the same. Hurry up, just wait for a while, it's too perfunctory. Mordo even suspected that Tony didn't plan to build a steel battlesuit for them at all. Hearing this, Russell couldn't help being a little surprised. Is this Tony trying to repudiate? And immediately, he shook his head, rejecting the idea. This is obviously impossible. Tony originally's character would not have done such a thing. Coupled with the deterrence given to him by his supreme mage, I think he may be too addicted to magic. For novelty, no one can refuse. Take your time, don't rush, Mage, obsessed with magic. Russell feels that's exactly what's going on with Tony right now. After the enthusiasm in his heart dissipated, he would remember what he should do. Or, find a way to remind him. For example, throw him into human society or something. Modu had a depressed expression on his face, and he could only recognize it by pinching his nose. Suddenly, he thought of something again and said hastily. By the way, Supreme Mage, the entire magical holy place is almost surrounded by people. Those common people keep wandering around the holy place with various instruments. Do you need someone to deal with it? Are you going to surround the holy place? Russell was also a little stunned. There is indeed something about this coquettish operation. But immediately, he became thoughtful, though they are unlikely to come close to the magic holy place. However, being surrounded by people like this is obviously not a good thing. Then let Tony deal with this. Tell him, just say it's my order. In the name of Tony Stark and human society, it is appropriate for him to handle it. Perhaps people disagree with his character. However, this does not affect most people will give this one a thin side. And at this moment, suddenly, a familiar voice suddenly sounded beside my ear. It's the system. The check-in task has been released. Please head to the check-in location as soon as possible. The long-lost system. The long-lost system prompt. But I want to compare it to the blankness of the previous 2 months. The current check-in frequency has increased a lot. This is a good thing. Russell was instantly delighted. But soon, he calmed down and checked the sign and information in his mind. After a while, his face became a little weird. Broadway. Why are the check-in locations given to me by the system all these weird places? Russell suddenly felt a little helpless. Just judging from the location of Broadway Street, he couldn't guess anything at all. This check-in location is located in New York. Maybe it has something to do with Spider-Man, who is also in New York. And immediately, he stopped thinking about it. Turning his head, he gave an order to Modu. Modu Mage, I have something to do and I need to go ahead. I will leave it to you to monitor the fluctuation of the magic enchantment. After finishing speaking, under Modu's somewhat bewildered eyes, he waved open a gold door and walked away. It wasn't until then that Modu reacted. Immediately couldn't help but sighed. This Supreme Mage is really too capricious. Manhattan, New York, Broadway. This is one of the busiest places in the city. At the same time, it is also a famous tourist attraction. However, at the moment, on this street, the bustling scene is no longer there. Everything around is broken, even the ground was shattered. Such a tragedy. It seems to have experienced the baptism of war. Crying cries, and various cries for help sounded one after another. The terrified crowd running in all directions was a scene of panic when a disaster strikes. And all of this is now ignored. Everyone held their breath and focused their eyes on the two figures under the spotlight. A monster named Abomination, and the green skin that is confronting Hema, the Green Titan. These two huge amounts of monster figures became the focus of attention of everyone present. The center of the battlefield. It is precisely because of the increasingly fierce battle between the two that it will bring about such terrifying destruction. Now, everyone can only watch helplessly. There is no room for meddling at all, and there is no thought of dying. Everyone present can only pray silently in their hearts. Hope to stop their fighting. At the moment, on the battlefield, the competition between the two sides became more and more intense. The collision of terrifying forces kicked up thick dust. The huge amounts of shockwave spread, and the whole ground trembled. However, the Green Titan, whose power was greatly reduced, finally lost the wind. The Green Titan, injected with inhibitory potions, is not an Abomination opponent at all. Back and forth. Finally, amidst people's exclamation, the bone-spurred figure directly grabbed the Green Titan's neck and lifted him up. Just like an eagle catching a chicken, letting him struggle desperately has no effect. The Green Titan let out roars one after another. However, he was as helpless as a child. Poor Hulk. The hatred opened its bloody mouth wide, and grinned, terrifying and ferocious. I used to chase and worship your strength, but now it seems that you are nothing more than that. Beast without wisdom will always be just a poor worm. And not far away. Looking at the situation on the field, General Ross's expression changed suddenly. No, Hulk is not his opponent. Damn it. I shouldn't have given Bronsky the chance. I regret it. If it weren't for his pursuit of the powerful power of the Green Titan. Too much trust in this guy Bronsky. So much so that he was given the opportunity to take advantage of the loophole. How could such a thing happen? Not only did the arrest plan fail again, but it also lost all reputation. Well now, discredited. The shutters of the media reporters kept ringing and they took pictures one after another. I believe that it won't be long before big news about him will hit the headlines. At that time, the whole world will know about the stupid things he did, General Ross. Seeing that the situation on the field was getting worse, General Ross gritted his teeth even more. Damn Bronsky. On the forehead, sweat kept dripping. Involuntarily, General Ross clenched his fists. His eyes full of anger cast on the huge amounts of figure. He couldn't wait to launch a missile and tear the damn guy to pieces. However, the remaining reason told him that he could not do this. Because the consequences of doing so are much more serious than the current situation. Using weapons of mass destruction in urban areas will result in a military court. Gritting his teeth, he could only watch helplessly, unable to do anything. General Ross was furious. At the same time, the thirst for power is getting stronger and stronger. And at this moment, in the middle of the battlefield, on the street, suddenly, a dazzling gold vortex appeared. The light is dazzling. Appearing in a moment, it immediately attracted everyone's attention. General Ross was taken aback. Immediately afterwards, it immediately became even uglier. This thing is the magic that Tony Stark said? As one of the top ranks of the military, General Ross definitely got the news from Colonel Rhodes. At the same time, I also learned about its conspicuous feature. However, he didn't take it to heart, still struggling to find traces of the Green Titan. At the moment this happens, it suddenly made him feel tense. Why did it appear here at this time? General Ross thought hard. And the other side. A group of reporters also spotted the figure coming out of the dazzling gold gate. The exclamation kept ringing. What is this? Could it be aliens? Hurry up and take pictures. I have a hunch, this must be big news. That's right. This is definitely more exciting than a battle between two monsters. For a while. The flash is blinding and the shutter sound keeps ringing. At the other side. Russell coming out of the portal. Immediately, he noticed the gazes of the crowd. Similarly, two huge figures raging on the battlefield were also seen. Suddenly realized, it turned out to be an abomination in a Green Titan. No wonder, the system will let him come here to sign in. However, this is also just right. He was just thinking about finding some suitable thugs for Kamar-Taj. Talent introduction plan. Looking like a Green Titan, being the god of door must be very intimidating, right? Definitely, this is a joke. Such a powerful combat power and a body with rough skin and thick flesh, he wouldn't just let it go to waste. But, let's talk about it. The appearance of Abomination is obviously more appropriate as the god of door. Terrible muscle bumps all over his body and severe bone spurs on his body. Coupled with its hideous and terrifying face. Just looking at it, there is a huge sense of oppression. I believe it will scare people into nightmares. Unfortunately, it is rebellious. Russell shook his head regretfully. In terms of the possibility of communication, Green Titan may be much bigger than him. Clearly possesses human intelligence. However, the sudden powerful force made his heart swell. He even taunted constantly while fighting. Ha ha ha. Come on, Hulk. Hold on. Don't you have dinner? Or, have you been drained by Betty? The taunts continued. However, what surprised Abomination was that he seems to have said the wrong thing. In front of him was the Hulk who was crushed and beaten by him. With a sudden roar, he gained some strength to resist. Even, with a fierce fist, it exploded, just sent him flying out. Boom. Among the wreckage, the loathsome figure crawled out from inside, unharmed. Shaking his head, he shook off the groggy feeling. His gaze immediately fell on the Green Titan who was looking up to the sky and howling. Interesting, because I mentioned Betty. Betty is the daughter of General Ross. And likewise, she has another identity. That is, Bruce Banner's girlfriend. It is also because of her that the power of Green Titan will suddenly increase. Even the restraining medicine flowing in his body was ignored. Hate was keenly aware of this. In other words, this woman, Betty, has become the key to unlocking Hulk's shackles. Pause time. Target transfer. Cruel eyes were placed on the military camp next to him. He vaguely remembered that this time, Betty also followed up. Not long after, he found his old boss General Ross. He is Betty's father. As long as he was in his hands, he wouldn't have to worry about Betty not showing up. Think here. Hate suddenly smiled cruelly, and his terrifying face became even more ferocious. Come on, Hulk, let me see how powerful you really are. Let me hate to give you a taste of despair. It's like what you let me experience back then. The voice just fell. The huge body suddenly moved. The earth roared. The trembling sound kept coming, beating everyone's heart. Thrilled. Seeing the hatred rushing towards General Ross, he was even more horrified. No, Bronsky is following us. What is he trying to do? Why did he come to me? The huge figure was getting closer. The roar of the earth also resounded more and more. He was never given a chance to think about it. Fire. Accompanied by an order. Immediately, gunfire blared. The torrent of bullets arrived in an instant. However, he was directly ignored by the abomination. That hard body could not leave any trace at all. Even in the face of missiles, he is confident that he can resist them head-on. Is approaching quickly. However, at this moment, Hate suddenly discovered that there was a figure on the way forward. Go away, little bug. The cattail fan stretched out its big hand and slapped it like a mosquito. The random blow didn't take him seriously at all. In his opinion, no one can survive his own attack. The guy in front of me is dead. What should I say? An innocent disaster. Lying down with a gun? Russell, who was signing in, was suddenly helpless. Originally, he was going to give the hatred a chance. Be a new man. As long as his personality can be changed, bringing back Kamar-Taj, being the god of door is not bad. But now it seems that it is no longer necessary. Wait to die. Hopeless. A strong wind came, roaring and rushing up. The distance gradually increased, and Russell could even clearly see every line on the huge palm. The hideous and terrifying face also appeared at the same time. Insect? It seems that this abomination is very inflated. Not even Dormammu dare talk to me like that. Russell sighed and shook his head, arms bent forward. Stretched out his arms, slowly spit out from his mouth. Empty. Instantly. In front of him, an invisible barrier was erected. The space is distorted, forming an unbreakable barrier. My mind is full of muscular hatred. Where can I notice these changes? The huge and ugly body slammed into it solidly. Boom. There was a loud noise that shook the sky, and the whole ground trembled. It was like hitting an indestructible steel plate. The hatred couldn't help staggering suddenly, and the whole person was a little dizzy. Dizzy, he covered his forehead and grinned. The already terrifying face became even more ferocious. At the same time, he looked over intently, looking at Russell's figure. His eyes were full of disbelief. Impossible. My strength should be invincible. What the hell did you do to me? Furious roars echoed throughout the scene. The disgust response left people a little confused. On the other side, General Ross, who knew some inside information, was shocked. Is this the power of magic? The powerful abomination is actually easy in his hands. Invincible? Russell couldn't help but sneer. Forgive him for being a bit unbearable, because this really sounds like a flag. Those who dare to call themselves invincible will end well. What's more, this is still in front of him. Suddenly, Russell strikes again. He wasn't interested in arguing with the guy whose head was already stuffed with muscle. Because it doesn't make any sense. Immediately, the space tumbled, and invisible ripples filled the air. It was as if the entire space was shaking. Under the spotlight, the light is dazzling. Countless transparent sharp blades composed of space condensed instantly. The cold light flickered and showed its sharpness. An icy and bone-chilling breath permeated the entire venue for a while. Even the air seems to be freezing. What are these things? Seeing this scene, a warning sign suddenly rose in the heart of hatred. Even he himself felt a little unbelievable. The sixth sense in the dark told him. If hit by an attack from these blades, he will die. Even this powerful body, which can even withstand the bombardment of missiles, cannot resist. An increasingly intense sense of crisis gradually came to mind. Seeing countless sharp blades attacking, his pupils shrank suddenly, like a light on his back. Not good. The speed at which these sharp blades struck was astonishingly fast. Right now, I don't care too much. Standing on the ground sideways, a tactical roll is used. The action is done in one go. Regardless of the image, he rolled out of the attack range. At the same time, he narrowly avoided this attack. After getting up from the ground, the hatred in his heart suddenly became extremely angry. Looking around, it seemed as if he could see the mocking look in everyone's eyes. The whispered voices of those people almost made his nose crooked. This is his body's subconscious reaction. There isn't even much time left for the brain to think. Instinctively, a decision was made, and all of this made him furious. Ever since he became an abomination and gained this power that shocked the world. Never been treated like this before, to be ridiculed and belittled. What an insult to him. Thinking of this, he suddenly became more and more furious. In the eyes, there seemed to be flames bursting out. On the ferocious and terrifying face, there was a cruel expression. Damn bug. How dare you embarrass me? All of this was attributed to Russell. The hateful eyes looked over. In those eyes that looked like animal pupils. The revealed meaning is obvious. Never die. Hatred was about to come and tear it apart. However, someone was one step faster. Behind. The roar sounded. Immediately afterwards, there were exclamations from the surrounding crowd. Russell looked back and saw the Green Titan just in time. In a hurry. His eyes fixed on the loathsome figure. The ground under his feet trembled, and he let out an unbearable whine under his tremendous strength. Rampage along the way, no matter what. And for Russell on his way. It seems to be ignored directly. Okay, another guy who wants to trample me to death like an ant. Russell suddenly felt helpless. He is 1.8 tall standing and 40 centimeters tall on the ground. Where would it be? Wouldn't it be ignored? However, in the eyes of these two titans. But it is no different from a little ant. These two people who fell in love and killed each other. In the eyes, there is only the other party. Shaking his head with some emotion, Russell watched the roaring Green Titan getting closer. He stretched out his hand and slapped him in front of him. I think you might need to calm down. Calm? Only violence can end the wounded beast. And the Green Titan in front of him is an existence countless times stronger than it. The anger accumulated in his heart will only make him stronger. This is his source of strength. At the same time, it was also a way to undo the shackles on him. And as it happens, looking at the current state of the Green Titan, the desired effect of the abomination has been achieved. Under rage, the power of the Green Titan expanded more and more. All over the body, the muscle lumps became more and more dense. With every landing, there is a strong sense of power. At this moment, the medicine that inhibits his physical strength. There is no effect at all. Rage's figure was getting closer. Running wildly and roaring, crushing everything in front of him. However, at the moment, in front of him, in front of the figure he ignored. But there was a sudden change, accompanied by Russell reaching out and snapping. The place where the space falls. Cracks appear like spider webs. Immediately afterwards, a crisp and piercing sound came. Click click click. It's like a shattered mirror. The complete space suddenly turned into fragments. This sudden change immediately stunned everyone present. And even more dumbfounded, it is a Green Titan running straight forward. At the moment, he was completely in a daze. Big doubts in the little eyes. Looking at the shattered space in front of him, it was dark inside. My mind was full of question marks that came one after another. However, castration continues unabated. In the state of telling, there is no way to change direction in a hurry. I can only watch helplessly as I rush into the black hole. Roar. After a roar that I don't know whether it was helplessness or anger. The audience fell silent. All was dumb. It was quiet, no one spoke. Similarly, no one made the slightest sound. Everyone was stunned by this sudden change. Such a big Green Titan just disappeared, or is it under their noses? What is this? Innocent, lie down. Many people even couldn't help rubbing their eyes, some couldn't believe their eyes. Some even thought they were hallucinating, however, whether they believe it or not. That's exactly what happened. Everything was shining brightly in front of them. Only the surrounding ruins can prove that the Green Titan existed. The first to react was the reporter. Excited, he picked up the camera in his hand, clicked and started taking pictures. Secondly, it was General Ross in the best spectator seat. He was dumbfounded by what happened before his eyes. Even after recovering, my head felt a little dizzy. It's like having a nightmare and not fully waking up. The power of magic is really beyond his imagination. He never thought about it. One day, the Green Titan that he hailed as a gift from God. It will be solved so easily. Looking at him like that, it's as easy as eating and drinking water. The power of magic. No wonder Tony Stark is crazy about it. And the abomination on the other side. Also recovered from the stunned. Looking at Russell, he was full of vigilance. He knew this guy was not simple, not a common human being. However, until now, he suddenly realized. The human being in front of him is not as simple as a common human being. This is clearly a monster in human skin, even Hulk. Thinking of this, the anger in his eyes suddenly ignited again. Damn bug, you made me lose the value of existence. Give me Hulk back. For him, Hulk is his belief and his lifelong pursuit. And defeating Hulk is his obsession. Only by defeating him can he prove his worth. And the disappearance of Hulk immediately drove him mad. Regardless of disregard, or even forget the previous lesson. As soon as his brain was hot, he rushed up again. Completely forgot the tragedy of the Green Titan in front. However, Russell's figure stood still. It's as if he didn't pay attention to him. This made the hatred even more furious, roaring again and again. Soon, he stepped forward and swung huge amounts of fists down. The face is extremely hideous, like a demon crawling out of hell. Go to hell, human. However, seeing the loathsome figure getting closer and closer. The moment he swung his discus-like fist down. Suddenly, Russell's figure moved, pressed down. Immediately afterwards, he stretched out his palm. Then, lightly, he met the loathed body. Boom. Huge amounts of figure flew out immediately. Moreover, this time it was even worse than the last time. It fell straight into the ruins. That's an understatement. It simply stunned the people watching around. After a long time, the monster named Abomination fell to the ground and never had a chance to get up again. It's like a sudden death and loss of vitality. And at this time, people suddenly woke up. Looking over with eyes full of disbelief, there were constant exclamations. Unbelievable, how did you do it? This is crazy. Who can tell me what he did to that monster? I hate the scenes that run amok. Even thinking about it now, it is still vivid. And the scars he left on the city. Thinking about it will not be forgotten by people for a long time. However, it's hard for people to believe it. Such a monster with terrifying power fell into the hands of a human? Moreover, being hanged and beaten all the way, there is no room for resistance. See here. General Ross couldn't help but gasped. In the eyes, longing eyes are unconsciously revealed. He is a fanatical strength advocate and has always advocated the supremacy of strength. And the scene in front of him was a bit disintegrating. Crush all his thoughts over the years, but at the same time, it also seemed to open a door to a new world for him. It turns out that the power of magic is so powerful, much stronger than I imagined. No wonder, even the Green Titan and the remodeled Bronski are so insignificant in front of him. The eyes are burning. Those hot eyes almost want to melt people away. Even the soldiers next to him felt this gaze. I shuddered unconsciously and moved away a little. But soon, he took a deep breath and looked away. Turning his head, he commanded in a deep voice. Soldier. Catch him immediately. Suspected of stealing military secrets, we have the right to arrest him. In front of them, the soldiers of the United States suddenly looked at each other in blank dismay. Stealing military secrets? Are you referring to the big green guy or what? Also, are you serious about attacking such a monster in human skin? In this regard, General Ross smiled with confidence. Don't worry, as long as he is still a human being, he must be bound by the law. And we are synonymous with human law. I said he was guilty, so he can only be arrested obediently. Unless he wants to be an enemy of the world. The other side. Abomination has completely fallen into a blinded state. Looking at his body lying on the ground, he looked dazed. Struggling with all my strength. However, it didn't have any effect. It's like being in a state of drowning. Horror power is felt in the body, and I can't exert my strength at all. The occurrence of such a situation immediately terrified him. In his heart, the huge amount of gap made him unacceptable for a while. It's just that it's futile to let him struggle. He could only watch helplessly as his body gradually turned cold. And at this time, Russell's figure slowly walked up, and said with a smile. Don't struggle anymore. This is the state of the soul, it will not be under your control. How can common people who have not experienced any training grasp the existence of their own soul in the state of soul astral? Not panicking and scrambling, it can already be regarded as abhorrence and courage. What's more, it was Russell himself who shot his soul out of his body. It is simply impossible to return to the body. Soul? The hatred suddenly became more and more stunned. But then, his face changed to panic. If someone had told him about the existence of the soul before, he would have scoffed. They even think that this is a rumor spread by a mad scientist in order to gain fame and fortune. But he had to believe that this development could subvert existing scientific theories. The human soul is real. Moreover, he is experiencing all this. This soul astral feeling. Russell smiled and looked at the abomination floating in midair thoughtfully. Looks like the Green Titan, the abominable soul is just a common human. Now, perhaps it would be appropriate to call him Bronski. Because, in his soul state, he didn't hate that kind of ugliness. The real deal is just a common person. Being imprisoned in midair, he could only watch all this helplessly. But immediately, Russell stopped thinking about it. Waving his hand, he directly put away Bronski's soul. As a commoner, he has no ability to resist at all. At the same time, his eyes turned slightly, looking at his feet. Such a dangerous thing cannot be left to the military of the United States. He was a little worried that if the body of hatred fell into their hands, I am afraid that the development of the situation will become even more out of control. This suspicion is not without reason, because, in terms of creating monsters, the United States military has always been professional. Immediately, a swirl of gold appeared on the ground. The body of hatred that fell on the ground disappeared. And along with it, there is Russell's figure. On the way. Just as they were accepting General Ross's order, the soldiers rushing here stopped suddenly. Looking at each other, some don't know what to do. In the middle of the army, General Ross frowned and couldn't help but swear. Damn it, let this guy escape. Don't know who this guy really is. But Tony Stark seems to know something. Let Colonel Rhodes inform Tony Stark immediately. I need more detailed information about magic.